Now your IT audit and assurance processes, they're going to focus on the approach to auditing as well as the methodologies and techniques that you're going to use. This section we're going to talk about here is going to provide information on the common practices, issues, concerns, and pitfalls which should be considered during the audit and assurance procedures. Now your IT audit and assurance processes are again broken down into some smaller sub areas or subcategories. And I'm going to just kind of hit you with them real quick as far as the list and have some discussion about these. The first is Section 3605, which is relying on the work of specialists and others. 3607 was integrating IT audit and assurance work with other audit activities. Oh, now just think about it. Your work in the IT audit might be in maybe a small process of an overall financial audit, and obviously the things that we do with the financials of a company are probably more than likely somehow associated with IT, the communications, the storage of information, and so you want to look at some of those guidelines about working those together. Using COBIT in the IT assurance process, some guidelines for that, Section 3610. Section 3630, the auditing of IT's general controls. And then we look at the controls and some different aspects of what we do. We also have Section 3650 for the application controls and 3653 for auditing your traditional application controls. So again, guidelines that help you maybe come up with good planning of ways in which you can go about doing the audit of these different types of controls. Some of the other areas that we see in the IT assurance guidelines, again, this is from the ITAF. Remember, it was built, a lot of it on what we've already looked at with ISACA. Section 3655 would be one of those areas. Auditing the enterprise resource planning systems, what we talked about before with the ERP. Section 3657 was an area that dealt with auditing alternative software development strategies. Oh, okay, so, again, software development strategies, and we might be looking at the whole software development lifecycle, that SDLC. Auditing specific requirements is Section 3660. Auditing government specified criteria. It gets us back into some of those regulations, expectations. That was Section 3661, and you're probably sitting there saying, do I need to remember these section numbers? No. I'm not. I'm giving them to you so you can look at them up more detail as I'm going through these section numbers. But what's important is that you just I want you to make sure you understand what the ITAF is doing with these guidelines, right? They're information we can look at and use in helping us make decisions about how to do some of these different audit programs. So I just talked about the government specified criteria was 3661. Industry specific criteria. And notice you can't get more vague either, right? By the way, that was Section 3662. Industry specific criteria. All right, so which industry? Well, you see, that's where we're saying some very vague guidelines at times because industries have different specifics that they need as far as the criteria. Hospital is different than a chip manufacturing plant, different than somebody building airplanes, right? I mean, they're all different industries. Guidelines for auditing with computer-assisted audit technologies, the CATs, right? The CAATs. Guidelines on IT auditing and regulatory reporting, and guidelines for selecting items that are of assurance interest. Now, your IT audit and assurance management is designed to give guidance to the IT audit and assurance professional with the information that's required to manage an audit. Now, that's a lot of duplicate words, it sounds like, right? Basically, as a auditing team, there is a management portion. And they're going to be the ones that are going to help give us guidance as well, based on all of these guidelines we just saw listed already. And their job is to help in the guidance and the management of, those professionals that are doing the audits and assurance. Now, the guidelines should include topics on the audit and assurance, the planning, the scoping, and putting the information into a detailed audit plan for us, as well as listing the objectives of what we're trying to achieve. Now, your IT audit and assurance management is again broken down into some sub areas. And again, I'm going to go through this list of sub areas with a few interjections in areas that might not sound as clear, but the titles are kind of, I think, straightforward. And again, we're still talking about guidelines, right? in the overall section 3000. And again, we're going to talk about some of the ways in which management has guidelines. The first one is 3810, which is the IT audit or assurance function guidelines about what it is, what we're creating and working with, and then more specifically in section 3820, the planning and scoping of IT audit and assurance objectives. Section 3830 gives us guidelines for the planning and scoping of the IT audit assurance work. Notice we're breaking down all of these little things, right? Objectives, the work that we're going to do. Next one is the planning and scoping risk assessments. That was section 3835. We have more guidelines, believe it or not, it's a few more. 3840, managing the IT audit and assurance process execution. And the next one is 3850, the integrating of the audit and assurance process together. Again, remember these are guidelines, and we're looking at them from now the audit and assurance management areas. So these are guidelines for the people that are working or managing this entire process and helping them with a lot of it, right? What are the management really helping us with? A lot of it was on the planning and scoping. And that was, of course, of the assurance objectives, the assurance work, the risk assessments, and the process execution. And that's what is designed, because they are responsible, as I said right a little bit before this, of giving us what those objectives are and assigning people to that, right? This is a part of management. So this helps them in creating that management plan. Some of the other areas that we'll see when it comes to the audit and assurance management areas, as far as our guidelines, falls under the guidelines for gathering evidence. That's section 3860. Now, just one more time, because I know that listening to me drone on about all these different areas, if you think back, when I was talking about the guidelines for the ISACA, I pretty much talked about these very guidelines with a little different wording in the titles. So I'm hoping that you remember what it was we were talking about. So I'm kind of showing you the contrasting and comparing, and just again reminding you that the goal of this domain is to help us in understanding this full life cycle of what we're doing with the auditing. Okay, so gathering evidence is one. Section 3870 is the documenting IT audit and assurance work. The next one, 3875, was documenting and confirming IT audit and assurance findings. And again, these are all important, right? Because we gather evidence to prove our findings. We talked about making sure you get the right evidence, get all the evidence, consider everything, documenting what you've done, document your findings, being able to evaluate your results and develop recommendations, which is the next section, 3830. And what do we do when we get all that done? Well, we got to communicate those recommendations. That's the effective IT audit and assurance reporting, which is covered by section 3890. Then reporting the IT audit and assurance recommendations, 3892. And reporting on IT advisory and consultancy reviews is section 3894.